Go.
Hi, my name is Jacob.
I'm Jason.
I'm Sam.
And I'm John,
And we're the Jammin' Jams.
and this is our project known as War Boat.
So for the introduction of it, we basically just made Battleship, which I guess was originally ran back in the 1930s, actually implemented as this board game in the mid 1960s. We just used the STM32 controller to be able to input everything into an actual board to play the game between one another.
This is our finite state machine that we use to help process how our system's going to run through. It begins in an initialized state, which is going to initialize all the LEDs, GPIO pins, just anything related to the board. And then it's going to transition into a setup state, which setup state falls under setting ships or ship placement, things like that, setting up the board and ensuring that both players are ready. Then we transition into the player one turn, where they are going to target somewhere on the matrice or the board and attempt to attack the opposing player. If it's hit, it will detect that and account for it in a lives remaining LED line at the bottom of the board. And then if it doesn't, then it will just switch the LED from blue to white and red to blue to red if it's a successful attack. Once that happens, it'll then update the game state and update the board for player one. Then we'll go to player two's turn. It'll do the exact same thing, detect if there was a ship hit or not, and update the game board. After player two's turn, it'll either go to the game over and reset state, which would mean that a player had successfully destroyed the ship of the opposing player. Otherwise, it will just loop back up to player one's turn, and we will restart the process until one player has lost all 3 cells of their ship. And by the way, the ships are 1 by 3, just a single ship. And so once it transitions into game over and reset state, they're technically 2 different things. I'm not going to go into a whole explanation of why, but it's either you're in game over state and you can choose to end the game and terminate it, or you have the option to reset the game, which will bring us all the way back up to the setup state. And that will just be a start of a new game.
This is for attack detection. So you can see these are the nanopixel LED boards we used. They are an 8x8 matrix grid. We shrunk that usable board length down to a 6x6. So that way we can also keep these 3 lights as a life indicator. What it does is it takes the 2 XY coordinates of the targeting, and then it uses those as reference pointers, and then it loops that through. And if it checks, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Just keep going.
What is this?
This is attack detection.
Is it detection? No, but I thought I was gonna have to.
It's on the
Oh, everything
Just
is
go to the
done.
next slide
Yeah,
then.
go to the next slide. We gotta skip that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, here's your edit.
Here's your code.
Okay, now this makes more sense. So it takes in X and Y as reference pointers. And if it is a hit, this is half the code. So if it's a hit, it loops through by the ship location and checks it. It marks a hit. If it's a hit, it will mark the location as red, increment the hit counter. And then if the hit counter increments, it marks the light LEDs as off. Is this me too?
Yes.
Okay, this is ship placement. This is how we place our ships at the beginning. So what we do here is we mark an X. We have 12 buttons for each board. 6 pick the rows, 6 pick the columns. You pick a row and column. It will highlight the selected area in purple. Once you select that area, it will progress to the next section, which is called ship rotation. It does matrix math to determine whether or not your ship is on the board or off the board, rotating around that being the center point of your 1x3 submarine warboat. For instance, this would be an inoperable area because that is past our 6x6 grid. So in this case, if we pick that corner, which is 6-6, we could only go 2 directions, and the board would make sure we don't lock it any other way.
And that's the.
And this is some of the targeting code for it.
And he literally just explained what I was supposed to explain for the turn management. So yeah, he just said it exactly. So, can you, I like the picture more. Can you go back actually to the picture? Just a couple. No, it's fine. But yeah, like he said, since this would be the initial like center point to it, it wouldn't be able to go to this direction or this direction because it's off the 6x6 board. So it'd only be able to go this direction or that direction. And oh, I thought you literally meant turn.
That's rotation.
Oh, okay. So then go back. So the turn management is a component of the game that ensures the simple gameplay of enforcing proper player interaction. Yeah, it goes to the next slide. And this is just like a piece of the code that we have for it. So player 1 turns, this is the state for it. It target selects. We have like an XY coordinate.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
So it has the XY coordinate, the detection is gonna be that too. So if the player count hits, then it goes to the player 2 state. Else if it goes to game over and then just breaks, and then it just does the exact same thing for player 2 as well.
All right, now we are on to the end of game conditions, which these are conditions that must be met in order for the device to terminate the game. The system's going to detect that it's a game over and declare a winner, ensuring that the game completes. We want to simulate a complete game with all the ships and make sure one player is fully destroyed. This to the side of us just shows a better example of making sure that the game recognizes who won and who lost. And I'm going to pass it off to Jacob since this was his very beautiful pixel art.
So I would like to say something about the pixel art in the game.
Yes.
So there were 2 types of pixel arts that were implemented into this game. The first one here is the O, as you can see. For that one, we specifically had to make matrices and tell it individual 0s and 1s of that we tried to stay on a 7x7 footprint for most of them, where we wanted them to be a certain color and we denote that. The other version was this red X that you have here, where because you actually have geometric lines, you can set for loops that will actually draw the crosses for you. And we were able to use both of those and even use functions to say, oh, input a player, and it'll change their board specifically to one of these 2 or any of the other pixel arts that we did need for the game.
Yeah. So, for example, the O and it's green represents the winning player's game board, while the X is in red and that represents the losing player's game board. And then we just have a bit of the code. It's pretty self-explanatory. A lot of it's just initializing the LEDs depending on which player won and which player lost. This one's going to initialize player 2 matrix to green, and we also initialize our C1 and C2 to 0 through 6, and that's going to represent the size of the matrix C that we're going to put on the board, I believe. And yeah, if you go down through, it just accounts for both players. It clears the LEDs, which confirms that the game is over. And now we do an LED update at the very, very bottom. And yes.
That's what you're updating at the bottom. At the bottom, what it updates is it brings in a question mark or CONT, the best we could represent continue.
That does say CONT.
It says CONT on there. I know it's hard to see.
But And then once you're here, you can either press enter or select, and that will progress. Enter will bring you into the next game. Select will allow you to end the program and shut down the system.
And then there's the code for it. This is the associated code.
All right, and so originally our design idea was to use UART. So we'd have two devices. We were originally going to use two STM32 boards and have them transmit the hit and detection data, because that would be the way to simplify the kind of least amount of information we'd have to send over it. We were able to do a demo for it that was provided by STM32, and it worked fine when we used two STM boards on one computer. But when we tried to use two different computers with the STM boards, something got lost in translation. The information wasn't able to be ported over between the STM boards. We figured out later that it was because both of them were trying to use the DMA buffer, which was integral to actually running the game to begin with. So it ended up being an issue of communication where, well, we weren't able to do what we wanted to, but we were still able to make a great game.
And this is basically just the conclusion of what we've all talked about for the initialize and the setup, for the turn management, for our attack detections, ship placement, the end of game conditions. It's just everything that we stated throughout the presentation so far. It's just like a very simple explanation of everything, of like the issues we had and what we're able to actually get to work. And yeah, that was about it, really.
And that is
That
it.
is it.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you so much,
Professor.
Professor.
Have a great winter.
Have a great winter.